Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 115. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday. Steelers Nation, the first spaghetti day of April in the Dave Bryan household. It is Pirates home opener, and Connor Griffin called up, so a lot of excitement there. A little less excitement on the Steelers front, a bit of a lull here post-Pro Day and post-owner meetings, but we're getting ready here. It is officially draft month, and so we're excited for that. Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Friday. Really looking forward to this Pirates game this afternoon and the debut of Connor Griffin, so that's exciting. I watched the Pens game, unfortunately, last night against Tampa Bay. That didn't go too terribly well. We don't have a ton of new stuff to talk about, but I think we've carved out a few things going on in Steeler Nation here that worth discussing. I know our Ross McCorkle ran with kind of an idea of some stats and all about air yards and time to throw and some things that will get a little bit of mileage out there. And I guess another notable thing here would be Kirk Cousins. People can rest easy. People can stand down. Kirk Cousins will not be a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers as he's agreed to a contract with the Raiders. Quite an interesting contract as well, too. And obviously with Aaron Rodgers still unsigned at this point, I think maybe we can get a little bit of mileage about kind of carryover of what we talked about, what Aaron Rodgers might be looking for. And Charlie Batch is firing back on social media about some of his thoughts on what Aaron Rodgers might be looking for. And I think we got a little bit of news on some Patrick Queen stuff that might be interesting to talk about today.
We do, so let's begin there, Dave, on Patrick Queen entering the final year of that 3-year contract he signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he'll do so under a new agency, the Team IFA agency, noting yesterday that Queen has switched to them, so he'll now be a member of Team IFA. It's been an interesting offseason for Patrick Queen with some trade rumors. Dallas apparently was very interested, and Pittsburgh apparently rebuffed those talks, and Pittsburgh has now paid out his roster bonus, so you would imagine, in all likelihood, Queen will remain a Steeler for 2026. What happens beyond will be very dependent on what happens this upcoming year in terms of how well does Queen play in the new system, the new scheme, under a new coaching staff. Will he try to re-up with Pittsburgh, or does he want to go somewhere else after the season? We shall see, but it's all under the guise of a new agency.
All right, a little bit to chew on there, mostly speculation. Obviously, we don't know the reason why for the agency switch, especially, I mean, it is a contract year. I guess first and foremost, do we expect Patrick Queen to sign an extension with the Steelers this offseason?
I would not. I would imagine playing things out is the most likely course under the new coaching staff, and Queen's 2 years in Pittsburgh previously have been a bit bumpy, some highs, but some also real lows, and I think you want to let this season play out.
All right, I agree with you from everything that you said there. I would be quite surprised if Patrick Queen got a contract extension this offseason. Now, there's only been the kind of smoke, if you will, as far as possible trades of Patrick Queen moving forward this offseason, with really it sounding like the Dallas Cowboys being the prime player there. I've kind of tried in my peripheral keep up with some of the things that Jerry Jones has said about the potentially trading for a linebacker. It sounds like they're still potentially open for it. It sounds like they have tried to some degree. I would imagine maybe they did look into Patrick Queen as part of that. If any team were to trade at this point, we've covered the whole roster bonus thing and with the Steelers, and even though they have paid that, it doesn't completely rule out the you know Patrick Queen being traded between now and the start of the 2026 season. It seems a little less unlikely now, but still not impossible, as I like to say. If a team did trade for Patrick Queen, it would make sense for the acquiring team to sign him to a new contract, correct? Especially if any kind of draft capital of like let's say a third round pick or a fourth round pick were in play. Maybe not necessarily a fourth, but
Right.
potentially a third. And then you could get into semantics here that if it was only a third and Patrick Queen was a 1 year player, and then
The
left
comp
in,
pick
yeah,
game, yeah.
yeah. But it, uh,
I don't think a trade would automatically come with a contract because I don't think he's going to fetch that much in an expiring year. So a team may ride it out.
Okay. But there is a chance of maybe a team at least thinking about trading for him and signing him to a contract extension, say 2 additional years. That it's not out of the question.
Correct. It's not, and at the least, I'm sure from Queen's side, any acquiring team, you want to have that conversation and say, what is your plan and vision? Do you want to work out a deal? If so, what does that look like? Or do you want to let the season and my contract play out? Those are all conversations to be had between agent and team.
All right, and once again, we don't know the status of his relationship with his former agency and whether or not maybe maybe a time frame was ended that he, or he got mad at him, or whether he thinks he might, or he's just trying to get out ahead of this a year ahead of time. Potentially being a free agent. It is at least very curious about the timing, though, right?
Sure. I mean, we've seen this before. Guys in contract years switch agencies, and I assume that his prior agency was the representation he had since he came out of the draft out of LSU. And people change, and things change, and you get exposed to different groups and their pitches. And I don't want to say the market has become hot at inside linebacker, but it's been a busy offseason for off-ball linebackers, guys like Devin Lloyd and Nakobe Dean, Tremaine Edmonds, Quay Walker. All those guys have gotten paid, Caden Ellis. And so, Lloyd's the only guy that's gotten more than Queen Steele a couple years ago, and Queen remains a top 10 linebacker in terms of average yearly value. But it's been an active market. I think Queen understands that and knows he'll be part of that one way or another next offseason.
And I think as far as the actual kind of cash situation for 2026 goes, let me see if I can pull that up real quick. As far as cash goes and the linebacker position for this year, I should have had all this already pulled up, but I didn't. I know he's up there still in like the top 10, I think.
He's seventh league wide in average yearly value.
Okay, that's an average yearly value. Let's look at linebackers. Where are they here? And as far as cash goes, you got Fred Warner, who's due 23.25 in cash this year. You got Roquan Smith, 20 million. You got Zach Bond, 17.25. Let's see, where's Queen? 13.33 million. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in cash earnings. So, and he's tied with, I think, Caden Ellis as well, too. And then right below him is Tremaine Edmonds. Believe it or not, Devin Bush now is earning $13 million in cash, I guess, with signing bonus and everything that he has gotten from the Browns recently here. So Queen is still a top 10 as far as financials go, average yearly value and cash due. So, he shouldn't be upset as far as that goes there. So the question becomes, I guess, if he were to get a new contract, it would probably come from another team, specifically this offseason, if it was to come this offseason. And it's just a bit curious. I mean, this could once again just be Queen getting out ahead of it. But more than anything, I want to talk about this for the sheer fact that if something were to happen with Queen and him get traded, Well, at least we can't say that there were some signs there.
What are you expecting from Patrick Queen, assuming he stays in Pittsburgh for 2026? What does he need to provide to open up a conversation about re-signing him after the season?
I think he would do have to do a whole hell of a lot to get himself in a situation. He'd have to have his obviously his best season as a Steeler.
So what
Uh,
does he need to improve? What are the areas of his game that'll tell you he had his best season in Pittsburgh?
I think we gotta just see more, playmaking, more consistency, on the good side from him on a down by down basis, in all facets of his game, getting off blocks, run stops, coverage aspects, and look, if you're gonna play a lot of zone, obviously, and he's had some situations over these last 2 years where there have been potential takeaway opportunities that, for whatever reason, hit him in the hands or whatnot, that he has not come up with those plays. We've got to when you and I think about a couple of but going back a couple of years ago when we looked at the inside linebacker production, whether it be sacks or tackles for loss or forced fumbles or interceptions, uh, the Steelers weren't very good in that category, and when you went out and got a guy for Queen and free agency like you did, you really expected to see a little bit more in that category, and not just Queen as a whole. I think the inside linebacker group as a whole. So I just really think for Queen, we've got to see more consistency in all areas when it comes from him.
I agree. I think consistency, he's really ridden that roller coaster. There were some highs. He was playing his best football in Pittsburgh, at least for a stretch last year. The Dublin game against Minnesota, the ensuing game out of the bye against Cleveland, he was really on a heater. And then the play sort of regressed. So finding that consistency, improving as a tacklist, some of the missed tackle metrics that our Josh Carney charts are really negative against Patrick Queen. And then, as you said, providing that splash that he did pretty routinely in Baltimore has been missing and absent in a lot of ways in Pittsburgh. 0 interceptions in 2 seasons, 2 sacks, does have 3 forced fumbles, but has only 14 combined tackles for loss. He had 6 in 2024, 8 in 2025. He had at least 9 in all 4 seasons in Baltimore, so has not gotten back to recapture those numbers. I wonder if Pittsburgh will take a little off his plate, not necessarily from a green dot perspective, but I thought Queen was on a podcast recently. We wrote about it and had some revealing comments comparing, contrasting Baltimore and Pittsburgh, saying in Baltimore, there's a little less weight on your shoulders of doing it all in terms of play calling and getting everything set and kind of being able to play your position. In Pittsburgh, you are the guy. You have to set the table. You are getting in the play calls. You're getting the front set. You're making checks. And it kind of is a difficult position to play. Those were Queen's words, at least. And so I don't know if the new coaching staff will be taking a little bit off of his plate to let him play the position. It's always felt like Queen has played his best football when he's not worn the green dot and he can kind of just focus on his 111 as opposed to everyone else's job to really play fast and play to his game.
Agreed. The funny thing about him, he's still only 26 years old. He won't turn 27 until August, and uh, he's still incredibly young. How many years has he been in the NFL now? Since what, 2020?
This will be year 7 for him. Yeah, he's so young, like Tremaine Edmonds, one of those young
Right.
guys that came out still in his prime. So you talk about if he's a free agent next year, a free agent to be, he's still a prime age player with a lot of experience. That could lead to a big payday if he has a great season.
Right. So, and for the Steelers to re-sign him, though, it feels like he would have to really have, Pro Bowl, I don't think he's gonna get himself in a situation where he's an all-pro or anything along those lines, but at least have him in the have put himself in the conversation where was Patrick Queen snubbed as let's say, even a second team all-pro?
I'm excited to see how Patrick Graham works with him, who has that front 7 mindset. I still wish, I don't mean to harp on it too much, they would have swapped out Scott McCurley. I don't have a lot of confidence in him as an inside linebackers coach, but him being such good friends and such a history with Mike McCarthy, we knew that he was going to stay. So stay he did. But I think Graham, could use Patrick Queen well, and we'll see how those guys coexist.
Look, he needs to have a more consistent season for this defense, plain and simple. And that goes for really up the spine of this defense. Not just Queen per se. So still young. Hopefully he gets healthy by if you're using the probability factor, it sounds like he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler this year, right?
Mhm.
Especially now that we moved past the roster bonus stage. But once again, the roster bonus aside, they could still save a little bit of money. What's the least that you would take for him in trade compensation? It'd have to be a third, right?
Yeah, I would not trade him for a fourth round pick. I don't know if his value is going to be strong enough to command a third on an expiring deal, which I think leads you to the position Pittsburgh is in, where you're just going to hold on to the guy and play out the season.
Now, even though he's I I think when you look globally, and we just went down the cash list, the earners of this year, is Queen worth the cash, the 13.3 million that he's set to earn this year based on the way he's played the last two seasons and based on the rest of the top 10? Probably not, but you know, you know, uh, there is the alternative conversation as well too. What do if you don't have him as part of your team, what does that leave you, especially with the state of this inside linebacker room right now?
Sure, it's in flux and would really be. And so if you did move on from Queen, where Peyton Olsen has not taken the steps necessary, and Harrison and Holcomb and Bruner are backup types, not going to be every down guys. Not the one, but one real positive on Patrick Queen. The dude is tough. He's durable. He has not missed a game in his NFL career. He's played 101 games in the last
Wow.
6 seasons. I think, what was the stat I had the other day? I believe he's one of two defensive players over the last 6 years to not miss a game. There might have been another one. Got a little funky because you had to consider that Buffalo Bills Bengals game that was canceled because of the Damar Hamlin medical situation. And so you had to think about, okay, who has 100 games, but it really should have been 101st. They didn't miss a game. But I think it was him and one other guy defensively to not miss a game. He's played through injuries. He's played through illness. I think he's got the right makeup. I think he's a good dude. I think he's wired the right way to succeed. But of course, the production just has to be there. Either it is or it isn't, and we're going to find out in 26.
I mean, he's still young enough and has the ability, and obviously been in Pittsburgh now for 2 years. Now, obviously, going to have a new defensive coaching staff. I mean, it's not out of the question that we could see the best season in Pittsburgh or best NFL season for Patrick Queen in 2026, right?
If the defensive line can improve, if they can keep him clean, that's going to be important for a run and chase guy like Patrick Queen and also Peyton Wilson. Then, of course, that's going to pay dividends and make Queen a better player. An unblocked linebacker is a happy linebacker, as I say. And that'll be the mission for Benton and Harmon and Hayward and whoever else gets added to that group. Joseph Day, of course, part of that unit as well.
All right. So once again, the only reason I think we're hyper focusing on this as a topic today is A, there's not a lot to talk about, and B, it caught me a little bit by surprise that he switched agents. Now there's obviously more to the story that we don't know. It'd be interesting if he got on a podcast and just said, "Yeah, I'm trying to get out ahead of this," potentially be a free agent next off season. What are the what Yeah, I mean, we already talked about it. It'd have to take a fantastic season for him to get signed after this season back to Pittsburgh, and quite honestly, it would probably take the use of the tag, right?
I don't know if it would take the use of the tag. Why do you say that?
Because you want to try to leverage, even though players hate the tag, uh, sometimes especially I think at a non-premium position such as that, I think it can sometimes play in a player's favor, I guess. So you don't want me to at least test free agency, then you need to tag me.
Isn't the tag $30 million next year?
What is it for the inside
Because
linebacker?
the problem is they lump off ball and edge
Yeah.
together, and it shoots up the price because edge guys get paid $40 million plus, and off-ball guys get 20 max. So it's $30 million. You can't tag Patrick Queen on that next year.
No, you can't. So yeah, tag would be obviously then out of the equation. I forgot that they lumped the edge guys with that, and also T.J. Watt, thanks to him, and a couple of these other edge guys that's out there, and even the transition tag, I think, what 25.2 projected at this point. So yeah, that's way too much there. But I mean, even if he was going to exceed. And once again, let's go back to the off the ball linebacker average yearly value. I mean, for him to get into the top 5, the way things sit right now, he'd have to exceed the 15 million, which really he's not too terribly off from that right now at 13.66 million. And so it wouldn't take a lot to get him into top 3, but he's going to have to play like a top 3.
It'll take a lot. It'll take a lot to actually in play to get there.
Right. So once again, we don't know what's behind this agent switch and all like that, but it was at least notable, and I figured we'd talk about it this morning. So just looking forward to seeing if he can have his best year in Pittsburgh, and he really needs to. It'd be beneficial for him, put more money in his pocket, especially with him only going to be 27 years old. And if the Steelers don't re-sign him, he could end up being one of the prizes of free agency next year, knowing how, you look how it's real top heavy year after year in free agency, because usually guys are either franchise tagged or they're re-signed right away. And those guys that end up hit free agency that are gone in those first 24 hours of the tampering period usually get paid quite handsomely. So he can put himself in that position, and maybe that's playing into the part of he's expecting and betting on himself to happen and wants to get out ahead of it with this agent switch.
The man loves to fish. You can buy a nice tackle box and a lot of fishing rods with the money he could get with a really good season. So we'll keep our eyes on Queens 2026. Dave, some housekeeping to get to a new topic here. Some 2025 Steelers finding new places in 2026. A pair of safeties signing elsewhere. Chuck Clark signed with the Detroit Lions earlier this week, and yesterday the Bengals signed Kyle Duggar to a 1-year contract. Don't know the money on that. Should be really cheap, not going to impact comp formula in all likelihood. And Isaiah Loudermilk visited the Detroit Lions earlier this week, but has not signed with the team. So Duggar staying in the AFC North, but going to Cincinnati, and Clark to the NFC in Detroit.
Yeah, this is a time of year where it's veteran benefit contract year. I would be pretty surprised if either of those with Duggar or Chuck Clark are anything more than that. And if they are, they won't be much more than that. And it's hard to imagine either one of those two making a difference in the comp pick formula balance sheet as we sit here today. And Loudermilk, the best that he's going to get is a veteran benefit contract out there from somebody. The fact that, I would imagine that the Steelers maybe have offered him at least that. Can't imagine he'll get offered more than that. So, but it, doesn't sound like the Steelers are also in a hurry to ink him now that their roster, I think, off-season roster sits at 70 players right now.
Right, so no big losses there. You had Clark and Duggar play, roles and parts last year. Duggar coming over from the Patriots deal after Deshaun Elliott went down for strong safety help, and then Clark ended up stepping in and seeing a role throughout the season. But Pittsburgh's added safety depth in Jaquan Brisker. Still don't know what's happening with Darnell Savage. It's been 3 weeks since that deal was reported, so you start to wonder, okay, is there a hang up here? Is there a medical? Is something going to cause this deal to fall through? I know sometimes these deals take some time to get finalized. Sometimes the guy's out of a country, has to get into the city and sign. But if it would have happened, you would imagine it would have happened by now. So I don't know what's going on with Darnell Savage, but you have Brisker, Sebastian Castro in year 2. Pittsburgh is certain to draft a safety. So I think a refreshed safety depth group was needed and received by Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and didn't Pelissero just double down recently saying that Savage still intends to sign with the Steelers? And that was like a week ago, I think, at this point. But still nothing on the official sheet. The team is yet to announce it. So yeah, I think technically he would make 71 players, but if we want to get in semantics here, I think the team has 70 players under contract right now.
So we'll see what happens there, but I'm starting to proceed under the assumption that he is not going to sign a deal. We'll see if that changes here before the draft. All right, Dave, one other player who signed yesterday, not a former Steeler, but viewed as a possible plan B had Aaron Rodgers turned down Pittsburgh, was Kirk Cousins, who is signing and assigned with the Las Vegas Raiders. The contract is sort of complicated, a lot of layers to it, but basically, in reality, a 1 year, $20 million contract, fully guaranteed, certainly could signal that Cousins will start this year, even under the assumption the Raiders draft Fernando Mendoza. Clint Kubiak talking about ideally rookie quarterback sit and learn. Tom Brady, part owner, big influence organization, sat and learned early in his career. Granted, he was a late day 3 pick, but I'm sure that's the perspective the Raiders are looking through and why they signed Cousins to start and, of course, mentor Mendoza along the way.
Yeah, and I think if people roll back in their head on the podcast, we mentioned how logical it was that Kirk Cousins potentially lands with the Raiders to mentor Fernando Mendoza, and all that lines up there. I think the interesting thing here, and props to the Raiders on this, the way they did this contract with Cousins, that made it really, really enticing for him to play, because the Falcons were already, he was guaranteed 10 million from there, and then there's offsets on top of that. So technically, the Raiders are paying Kirk Cousins $1.3 million for 2026, and the Falcons are paying the other 8.7 million. They're on the hook for that. So technically, Kirk Cousins is going to make that $10 million that he was already guaranteed to make this year in 2026. Where it becomes quite interesting is he has a $10 million fully guaranteed roster bonus on the third day of the 2027 league year. So that's fully guaranteed. So if you want to look at this in a vacuum, the Kirk Cousins is going to make $10 million this year and $10 million guaranteed next year. Now, I have not seen the other. He's got some sort of option, 2-year option bonus. I don't know the specifics of that, and how that works in potentially 2027, but the long and short of it, however you want to look at it, is Kirk Cousins is going to earn, $20 million by at least March of next year. So you might as well call that $20 million in 2026. And obviously where it goes from there. Now look, could he end up remaining with the Raiders? And we'll have to see how that option bonus goes. And I believe too that $10 million roster bonus next offseason is offset free on top of it there.
Correct.
So there's, in other words, he if the Raiders don't retain him, he's still going to get that $10 million, and then he can
double dip.
Yeah, he can double dip and not be worried about the having to play for technically the minimum for a new team in 2027 there. So why are we talking all about this? Why does it matter? A, because several people have been trying to link Kirk Cousins as a fallback option to the Steelers should they not be able to get Aaron Rodgers signed, or if Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to play. That's number one. B, no matter how you want to dice this up, as far as specifics go, Kirk Cousins is going to earn $20 million. And if I'm Aaron Rodgers right now, hey, Kirk Cousins is going to earn $20 million by next March. I believe that I'm worth at least $20 million by next March, however you want to divvy that up. And you and I, coming off of that conversation the other day, based on what Charlie Batch believes, and I think we came to the conclusion of around $20 million, did we not, for 2026 for Aaron Rodgers?
I was a little below that in terms of the base value. I would expect an increase, like I said, that would be reflective of the salary cap going up, so about 20%. So I was in that 16 to $17 million base range for Rodgers.
All right. you know, I don't know if I'm Aaron Rodgers right now, and even though there's only potentially one landing spot out there right now, knowing how I played last year and obviously getting this team in the playoffs and I, there's no way that I'd take less than 20 million if we're being honest, and I don't care how much money that I have in the bank.
But this was the situation last year. He could have gotten a lot more money from Pittsburgh even last year, right? And he elected not to. So why is he
Yeah.
chasing money this year after not chasing money last year? I don't get it. I mean, I don't think the Cousins thing's gonna impact Rodgers too much. I don't think he's gonna sit there and say, "Well, this is what this guy's getting, and so I deserve more." If we wanted to play true market value for Rodgers, he'd be getting more than Kirk Cousins. He'd be getting close to that 30 million that Charlie Batch talks about. But I don't think it's a calculation for Rodgers. It was not a year ago. I don't know why this year would be any different.
Okay. We both agree that he outplayed his cash value last year, right?
Sure, and he was always likely to, just given how below market that contract was.
Okay. And then
It's not to say he played great, it just means he
obviously
played.
and two, they gave him the opportunity to earn up to what was it, 20 million last year?
Thereabouts with incentives, and so I
Yeah.
imagine he'll have the same incentive package or something similar with a base salary that probably is in that 16 to $17 million range.
All right. But it is, it becomes part of the conversation now because people always want to play for what they're worth, not necessarily what their bank account says they need.
But Rodgers didn't do that last year, did he not?
Right, but he's also going to coming off very obviously disappointing situation, and I guess more of a reset, and maybe took it as a I'll give you a discount this year for a fresh start.
I mean, it's not what he said. He said he just didn't care about the money that
No,
much,
I'm
and
thinking I'm
so
thinking hypothetically, what could be going on in the back of his head.
yeah, well, that's a dangerous place for us to try to get into. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. I don't believe the contract is an issue in the sense of the deal wouldn't happen because there was some sort of contractual bridge they couldn't get together and agree upon. So whether that is even 21 million, I think they could work it out. I don't think that's going to be a sticking point. I don't think it's the reason why nothing has happened between the two sides. That's Charlie Batch's theory. I don't agree with that, and I'll just stand by and say I believe that he'll get an increase on last year's contract. We talked about on Wednesday's show, but the Cousins contract really doesn't change Rogers' calculation or want or ask or anything, in my view.
The only thing from a cap perspective is obviously if you get over that, 13, the base value, what counts against the cap versus incentives and all like that. If you want that cap number to be less than 15 million, yet the players, guaranteed to earn, say, $20 million, in 2026, you'd have to do a multi-year deal. Now the
Or
Steelers,
void years.
yeah, void years. And normally the Steelers stay away from that, but this might be a situation where they have to look into something that like that. Is there any benefit to maybe doing a contract similar to Cousins, where let's say there is a $10 million guaranteed roster bonus in 2027, and at least technically having Aaron Rodgers under contract for 2027, even though that's likely to become dead money?
Probably not. I don't think there's a need to overcomplicate it the way that the Cousins deal, which in theory on paper could be read as a 5-year contract worth 160 something million, even though he's very unlikely to actually earn all or even a good majority of that money. I think you keep it simple unless you really needed to do some cap math to, change his cap number in some ways, then you probably just keep the contract similar to last year with a slight increase.
All right. So we'll see how that goes. Charlie Batch is still. What did Charlie Batch say specifically when he doubled down?
He just doubled down. I don't remember exactly what he said on his podcast with Trey Essex, but he just said that he still believes that money is the issue, that he could want 30 million. And he made the comment of, when have you ever seen Pittsburgh wait so long with a player? And to that, I would say, last year
last year,
with
yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, and they waited that long, and the money was not. Again, it was a clear below market contract. So I don't agree with Batch on his take, but he'll stand by it.
At this point, where else can not Kirk Cousins? Where else can Aaron Rodgers go?
Well, I think
Eh,
the whole
eh,
Denver stuff that Florio tried to tease blew up in his face pretty quickly and was flatly rejected by anyone with a pulse on the Denver beat. So there really is nowhere else. The question is just, does Rodgers want to go sit on a beach and go, retire, which is not a bad proposition, or go play? So his option is just to go, have fun with his wife for the next 20 years or go get hit by a 300-pound lineman. And so that's kind of the decision he's going to make.
All right. So at this point, and it feels like it's been this way for a while now, even before the Kirk Cousins news. It's Pittsburgh or bust right now.
And Art Rooney says he expects it before the draft. And just to touch on that for a brief moment, why do you think Rooney expects it before the draft? The only thing that he said about why he thinks a decision will come sooner, and this has not been talked about much. It was tucked away in the Jerry Dulac article Sunday that was overshadowed by the headline of Rooney saying he expects an answer before the draft. But Rooney had told Dulac that Rodgers had told the Steelers he will not take as long as last year. And Rooney himself admitted to Dulac he did not know exactly what that meant. But I guess his interpretation of that is before the draft. And so it's interesting to kind of see. It's like the one thing we've gotten from the team in terms of what Rodgers has told Pittsburgh about Rodgers' decision-making and plan and timeline. And Rooney's interpretation of that, I think, is kind of interesting.
Well, I don't want to rehash all that we did on the other show there, but I mean, it makes sense. I mean, at least organizationally and going into the draft, do you really want someone out there that hasn't given you at least a firm answer of whether or not he's going to play, for you next season, especially in this situation where it seems like Aaron Rodgers is out of options and this is a team that does not have a franchise quarterback at this time, and this is a team that really has no veteran even now that Kirk Cousins is off the board. I mean, who are the alternatives at this point? So
This was a situation they were in last year, though,
Mhm.
basically identical to it, with the same spot, and they navigated through the draft. They can do it. Jonathan Jones from CBS Sports had tweeted out a couple days ago that this is kind of more about optics, that Rooney does not want this kind of cloud and saga hanging over the team for the NFL draft, which is supposed to be spotlight on the city and the opportunity and just the celebration that it's in Pittsburgh this year. It sounds like Rooney does not want the whole story to get turned into another edition of will he, won't he with Aaron Rodgers.
is it a soft nudge that's a little bit firm with the
Yeah,
word
it didn't
expect?
sound super soft to me. It sounded pretty firm. To me, that's a deadline. Now, what happens if the deadline comes and goes? Does Pittsburgh just bail? I don't think they would, but I
No,
think it was
but
pretty
you
pretty
do
clear
have the
from Rooney.
optics as well too. The fan base is going to be if the draft gets here and Aaron Rodgers hasn't announced that he's coming back and signing with the Steelers, or at least behind closed doors hasn't told him that he's going to sign. Uh, then it definitely looks bad. And if the Steelers end up signing him at after who knows? Aaron just might not like going to go to OTAs. Period.
That's well documented, and that certainly could be a reason why he's delaying this. Yeah, it would certainly be a bad look, or you could really say embarrassing, if Roger just seems to ignore Rooney's words and just says, "Yeah, he says he expects it, but I'll let you know."
And look, if I'm the Steelers, if I'm Mike McCarthy, if I'm, you got, new coaching staff in there, you're trying to implement some new things offensively, and you're okay with what happened last year. At least by the time you want all those ducks in a row. And look, OTA. I mean, the phase one starts this next week, right? And if he's not under contract, he's not going to be in there for that.
Sure, he wouldn't have been in there probably either way, under
Right.
contract or not, and you're not missing anything. You can't do any real on-field work in terms of units and coaching and that type of stuff. It's a lot of weight room stuff, some very informal, I think, on-field permission.
But Mike McCarthy talked about kind of, the things that they're going to even be trying to do in phase one of start putting, getting these guys all on the same page.
Oh,
there.
sure.
You would
sure.
obviously want your quarterback part of that.
Of course, yeah, you always do. Obviously, Rodgers knows the system and scheme, the things McCarthy's talking about. Rodgers knows chapter and verse, but yeah, of course you want your quarterback there ideally for even the voluntary OTAs, which Rodgers skipped last year to work with young receivers and young players and get on the same page. It's no wonder that Rodgers didn't get along with Roman Wilson last year. When you missed the spring workouts, you missed opportunities to work out with him and get on the same page and develop reps. Is that guaranteed to change the scope of Wilson's season? No, but it all helps. It all adds up. So if they go draft a receiver and Rodgers misses voluntary OTAs, wow, don't be shocked if that rookie receiver has difficulty getting on the same page with Rodgers out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So
All right.
anyway,
We sit and wait still.
we do. Dave, Ross McCorkle had a really good and lengthy article on Pittsburgh's passing game and how they create their explosive plays, even though there's been a general lack of over the last several seasons, and compared that to the rest of the NFL. I know you kind of spearheaded this. You were pulling a lot of the data and wanted us to kind of dig into that. So what was your motivation on us kind of wanting to research that, and what are your takeaways from the results?
All right. We continue to talk about explosive plays, right? We talk about how McCarthy, wants to be able to push the football down the field a little bit more. I'm trying to find out what I did with it. Where's that article on our site?
I'll send you a link to it, Dave.
All right. Just so I have the hard numbers in front of me. And I pulled all I had a feeling I knew that before even going searching the numbers, how this would ultimately play out here. But overall, I think looking ahead, where did it go here? Oh,
I sent it to you.
All right, let me see. Yeah, I think when you look at this data, we knew last year, one of the things that we kind of knew throughout the season, that the Steelers were good in yards after the catch. And obviously, in total they had, what did I have down here? 41 explosive passing plays that resulted in 20 or yards gained on the play. We also knew throughout the season how quick the football was coming out of Aaron Rodgers' hand, and the time to throw aspect of it here. I think for what they did, especially with the quick throw time by Aaron Rodgers for most of the season, and the fact that they were able to register the explosive plays that they did, is obviously backed up a lot by the yards after the catch. And the thing is, moving forward, how duplicatable, I guess, is the yards after the catch aspect to rely heavily on producing the explosive plays, because the average air yards that the Steelers had on those explosive plays was one of the lowest in the league at 16.22 yards past the line of scrimmage overall. Now, the average time to throw was one of the quickest in the league at 2.63 seconds there. But yet McCarthy says that he wants to push the football down the field more this year. The only way that you're able to do that is obviously protect your quarterback for a little bit longer time, right? And you do wonder if the Steelers are and if Aaron Rodgers is even going to be able to do that based on even, his last kind of 3 years collectively in the league here. And look, the number of explosives too was kind of lowest in the league at 41. If you want more explosives, it feels like you're going to have to, especially with what we expect Aaron still to have a moderately low snap to throw time, you're going to have that yak involved there. And this has been one of the biggest things about retaining Aaron Rodgers, and why I was hoping this team would potentially maybe somehow get themselves going in a different direction other than Aaron Rodgers, because I do wonder, even though McCarthy wants to push the football, if you're going to get rid of the football that quick, but yet expect your average target average yards per attempt to go further down the field, it's going to be a lot of timing routes. You're not going to have time to let things develop there. So my biggest concern is how they're going to go about pushing the football down the field further to guys like Pittman, who they've said that McCarthy says, yeah, Pittman was told that, he's going to get more opportunities down the field. Obviously, you got a guy like DK Metcalf that, can get down the field. We'll see who they draft in this draft class that maybe can help in that area as well too there. So my biggest concern was how duplicatable is the yards after the catch aspect, specifically on explosive plays with this team, knowing that the average time to throw time for Aaron Rodgers probably isn't going to grow all that great.
Right. Something has to give. If you want a more vertical passing game, then typically that means you're holding onto the ball longer and, of course, pushing it downfield. I did, and I'm pulling up numbers right now from 2020 to 2024. I was looking at intended air yards per attempt to see where Dak ranked during his time with McCarthy. He was 24th in the NFL at 7.9 yards per attempt. Rodgers over that span was 34th at 7.6, but trying to pull up the numbers for 2025 to see where Rodgers ranked. I assume it was probably pretty low overall. So we'll have to see how those kind of things comport and if Rodgers will open it up more or if he wants to keep it short the way that he has the last couple of seasons. Last year, Dak was 12th at 8.0, granted, not working with Mike McCarthy, and Rodgers was 26th in the NFL out of 26 qualifiers on my list here at 6.0. So it'll be interesting to see how those two work, even though those two know each other so well. You wonder kind of philosophically, can they still work well?
Yeah, is it duplicatable? Because what if this team didn't have the yards after the catch? And one thing I don't think Ross broke down in here how many of these explosive play? Well, we can look real quick, I guess, on StatHead real quick. How many of the explosive plays went to running backs last year?
Yeah, I can look that up if you want me to look
Yeah,
at it. You're
yeah.
saying 20-yard gains through the air
Right, right.
to Warren or Gainwell?
Passing plays that ended up in gains of 20 yards per total gained. And then how many of those were by running backs there?
Okay, let me
And there was
pull it
only
up here.
41 on the season in
Sure.
total.
Sure. So there wasn't a ton there overall. I'm looking at take a guess, Dave, as I tabulate the numbers here. How many went to running backs of the 41?
8.
Looks like 5. I got
Okay.
3 to Gainwell, 2 to Warren,
All right. How many went to tight ends?
6 to Freiermuth, 3 to Washington, 1 to Jonnu Smith. So 10.
And then you said 5 to the running back, so that's 15, right?
Right.
So
DK led with 15 such receptions. No one else had more than 6. That was Freiermuth.
okay. All right. I think one of those came to Skronik on the first touchdown, didn't it?
Yes, and he had a second one. He finished the year with 2.
All right. So I would imagine the Steelers were low on the lower side in the league. I mean, obviously, because they only had 41 passing explosive plays as far as the wide receiver position went, they were probably one of the low teams in the league as far as explosive passing plays to wide receivers.
I'm sure just given the construction of the offense, the tight end heavy nature, the lack of explosive plays overall. So we'll see what the difference is under McCarthy. You would expect a difference, more 11 personnel. You had Michael Pittman Jr. likely to draft a receiver top 2 rounds, almost certain to do that, really. And that should all infuse more big plays. But how does Rodgers fit into all of that? If his snap to throw time is 2.3 seconds, it's harder to get those big plays downfield. Now, Rodgers' arm is still live and he'll take some shots downfield. And, if guys can go wind, and maybe that trust will increase Rodgers' willingness to go downfield if they start making hay vertically. But it's something to watch.
And it's not like you can, how much more would you expect a moving pocket to be able to help in that with a guy like Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, they ran their version of keepers last year, and Rodgers showed some escapability. The Bengals game, a good example of that, the primetime performance. So, it's not going to be something you're going to do a ton, and it's not going to be the calling card that it once was for Rodgers, but it'll be part of the offense, sure.
All right, look, for this offense to be able to get themselves into the playoffs and beyond, they've got to be able to produce more explosive plays, correct? Because that'll obviously help in, uh, average net yards per passing attempt and all like that, that we talk about. I don't know. And look, we expect them, whoever they draft as a wide receiver, to be a pretty good yak guy, I would imagine, on top of it there. But I mean, it just feels like relying on yak to produce explosive plays is hard to do in the NFL year after year.
You should just be well rounded, be able to get those big plays no matter what. So, no matter the defense that you're playing against, no matter their game plan, whether they play shell coverage that takes away the vertical shots, maybe that week you go more yak and go underneath and create after the catch. You face a team that runs more single high and kind of press man coverage with the corners, then you can go over the top and make plays there. You should not be limited where a defense can play a certain coverage or certain style and take away your big plays. And you have to get big plays. The correlation between explosive plays on a drive and scoring drives are very strong, I assume. So, yeah, Pittsburgh needs more of it. 41 a year ago is not enough.
All right. So once again, they relied heavily on yak last year to produce explosive passing plays, and even so, they only had 41 in total through the air. So, and if McCarthy wants to push the football down the field, it feels like you're going to have Aaron Rodgers hold on to the football there. I mean, that's the long and short of it, right? Is
Hmm.
if they're going to produce more explosive plays through the air, it feels like Aaron's going to have to hold on to the football a little bit more
Sure.
longer.
I agree. I agree. It's hard to, like I said, be 2.3 seconds and have a ton of air yards off of that.
Look at next gen stats real quick over the last. Let's look over the last 3 years of Aaron Rodgers' time to throw stats here. Obviously, last year as a whole, average was it time to throw? He was towards the bottom of the league at 2.59 on all throws. In 2024, time to throw. Aaron Rodgers was towards the bottom of the league at 2.69. And then obviously in 2023, he was gone after the one game, right?
Yeah, and in 23, yeah, that was the Achilles heel tour.
In 2022 for Aaron Rodgers, it was 2.7, which put him, I don't know, closer to the middle of the league, I guess, overall. Does Aaron Rodgers have can Aaron Rodgers get back to at least around a, 2.7 time to throw?
Yeah, I mean, it just, I don't know what number exactly to put it on. Something probably higher than last year. But I mean, one small reason, his release is so quick. And so that helps the ball come out that fraction of a second more. But yeah, 2.5 or above is probably, 2.7. Yeah, that's probably a fine number to go with.
Is one of the biggest concerns right now when it comes to this offense in 2026, specifically if Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, is the ability to produce more explosive plays.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right, I agree because I mean they ran the ball okay last year, right?
Their run success rate was good, and it was a tough start to the year. They could not run the ball well early, but the run game got going really after the bye and on. And even though they didn't have gaudy yards per carry and the attempts were down in part because you have an immobile quarterback, and so that hurts the attempt aspect. But yeah, their success rate was, Gainwell and Warren were top 10, I think, in run success rate last year.
All right. All right. So good job by Ross. If you haven't read that post with all the numbers and all like that, get by Steelers Depot. He's got some great charts and graphs in there as well too. But the whole reason for going down this road was the lack of explosive plays last year, the quick release by Aaron Rodgers, and the fact that with McCarthy coming in, he intends to push the football down the field more.
Right. All right, Dave, let's move on here. One last thing to talk about. The Indiana Pro Day was held earlier this week on April 1st. So, Wednesday, that was the last big marquee Pro Day. And you had Fernando Mendoza working out, but you had a lot of other players who may become Pittsburgh Steelers working out as well. Pittsburgh, to the best of our knowledge, sent 2 personnel members to the workout. That was area scout Casey Weidel, who is assistant GM Andy Weidel, that's his brother, and new scout, what's his name, Tim Gribble, to the workout. So, to our knowledge, no positional coaches attended. I did not see wide receivers coach Adam Henry, for example, who would have made sense to be there for Cooper and Surratt. Henry himself coached at Indiana back in 2022. So, lighter attendance for the workout, and we'll see if those guys come in.
Right. Obviously, no Connor McCarthy there. Someone thought that they maybe saw Henry, but I think you looked closer at that and didn't spot him.
I don't know. I don't remember anyone sending me, "Is this
I
Adam
think
Henry?"
someone replied to one of your tweets or tagged both of us and all thinking that it might.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you
Look
have
at.
okay. I
I'll
don't know
have.
how I could go back and find that.
Let me see if I can find that real quick here.
Yeah, I'm willing to go back and check. I did not see the tweet, though.
Let me see if I can find it real quick here. It was in a reply. Oh, I can't find it here right off the cuff here, but
Yeah,
I
we'll
thought
look later.
someone responded to one of yours, but I looked at it. It was hard to tell if that was actually Henry there in one of those photos. And I've looked at about, I don't know, 50 photos and some of the tape on Twitter trying to look at it as well too. And I never spotted any more than the 2 that you spotted there.
Okay, yeah, I went through. Oh, I see. I see it now.
Do you see the
Um,
picture?
I do. Yeah, I'd have to check. And because Henry's a less familiar face, it's a little bit hard just looking at it first blush here to say if that's him or not. I'll have to go back and try to find a better source. It's a pretty blurry photo.
Yeah. That looks like it could be a Green Bay Packers logo there, right?
Yes, and to give my little soapbox, all I ever see are Packer scouts. I that's I if we had Packers Depot Day, we'd be aces because all I ever do is see Packer scouts, and I got to squint for 4 hours to find a Steelers scout. So I'll have to go back and check on that. I can't conclude one way or the other if that's Henry or not. But
All
if
right.
he was there, he didn't. I don't think he put anyone through the workout. I didn't see any other information, so we'll have to check.
All right, and this comes from that reply came from Steelers Win 109 on Twitter. So just to shout him out, but yeah, uh, not we'll have to dig deeper, and we will over the because look, the pro days are coming to the end. It's normally a time when we try to go back through some of the pro day stuff that might have surfaced. Some of the local news coverage videos start. You can go back and find some of those and maybe spot some people. It's not uncommon for us to spot people after the fact, right?
Yeah, we're gonna go through probably the list again. I know there's pro days that we know they were at: Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Arizona, but we don't know what representative attended on behalf of Pittsburgh. Most often they're area scouts, but we just don't know. We have not been able to confirm those types of things, and we'll double check Indiana too.
All right. I think the consensus is that Elijah Surratt ran 4.5 40-yard dash there. I looked for more complete. Really interested to see his 3-cone and his short shuttle, but I have not found that yet. Now, I think on is it Monday when Dane Brugler releases his draft guide, and I've got another source that I think will be updating over the weekend of some of that tablet because Surratt didn't do anything. I don't believe at the combine, didn't run or anything. So I know there's a lot of people paying attention to the pro day when it comes to that. I would be interested to know his 3-cone time and his short shuttle time if indeed that ends up getting published because I went back and looking at what even though we got a new coach and we went over the measurables of wide receivers that McCarthy is drafted and all, I still wanted to go back and take a peek at last year's what the Steelers look for studies that you do. Are you still going to do those again? I know that there's less to potentially be
Hmm.
garnered from it because we are. But are you still going to do something along those lines? And wait, and did they even draft? They didn't draft a wide receiver last year, right?
No, they didn't.
All right, so none of that's going to change as
Sure.
far as the Steelers go, at least going into this year and all. But it was quite interesting. And look, in the past, a lot of those have marked up of guys that at least check, I don't know, 7 of 10 boxes or something along those lines. We're able to build. We've over the years been able to build a pretty decent list off of those. Now we get into the aspect of adding into that. Now, at the very least, the averages that we went over the other day as far as height and weight of wide receivers under McCarthy, and I think there is at least some of that holds a lot of water now, specifically when McCarthy coming out saying, "I like bigger receivers," I like big wide receivers, and I can't deny,
I was waiting for that. To answer your question, I will do the what they look for study for wide receivers because it's such an obvious position. They're likely and certain to draft. I don't know if I'll do it for any other position because I just don't know how relevant it is. And there's so much on our plate right now to get ready for the draft, but I'll definitely do it at least for the wide receiver position.
How biased should we be when it comes to the 6 foot mark on wide receivers, specifically early in this draft, that are 6 foot, under 6 foot, and under, what do we say, 200 pounds? I mean, we kind of, we talked the other day. I mean, we're not going to throw Omar Cooper Jr. out with the bathwater, right? Or we're not
Well,
going
the
to.
weight, I don't know. We didn't have a conclusion on the weight, did we? The way that we had on the height?
I think we came across something around wasn't it 200 something?
Well, you had the average, but
Right.
when the height, it was only 2 out of the 20 some odd receivers had been under 6 foot, which is a pretty strong correlation. I don't know on the weight if we had studied it and drawn a similar conclusion.
All right, let me see what this said. The average weight was 203.4 pounds.
Okay, but how many of those guys were under 200 pounds? Just from that, to apply the same test we did for height, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. So obviously, bigger receivers tend to be over 200 pounds naturally, but you have only 2 under 6 foot, but 8 under 200 pounds. Now, most of them are pretty close 197, 195, 198. I think the lightest receiver they had drafted was 188. So you may have a cutoff under like 190, but I think if you're a buck 99 like Omar Cooper, not going to exclude you because of it.
All right, and CD Lamb was 6'1 3/4", 198. All right, so
Right.
let's look at the wide receivers that were drafted by Mike McCarthy in either Green Bay or Dallas in the first 3 rounds. Okay, because let's drill that down. You had Jalen Tolbert, 6'1", 194. You had CD Lamb, 6'1 3/4", 198. Early rounds in Green Bay, there weren't many of them. Tyron Montgomery, 5'11", 7/8", 221 pounds, so obviously under 6. Devontae Adams, 6 foot, 7/8", 215 pounds. Oh, who else early? Randall, I guess that's Cobbin in
Hmm.
2011, right? 5'10 1/4", 191 pounds. Who else early? Jordy Nelson. Boy, AI's got a long way to go still here, brother. Trying to give these guys the wrong last names in here. 6'3", 217 pounds. James Jones, 6 foot, 200 pounds. So yeah, and then Greg Dortch going all the way back to 2000. Was it? Let me see if that lines up here.
Dortch? Is that the current?
That can't be right, right?
Yeah, that's not a former Packer. That's a current Denver
Right.
Broncos tight end.
Yeah. Who was the 2006? See, that's why you get in trouble relying on AI.
Greg
Uh,
Jennings might be the guy you're
okay,
thinking of.
Jennings here.
Is it saying Dortch?
It's
How is
saying
it reading like that?
Dortch. I don't know.
Okay. So yeah, this is why I'm gonna be the old cranky man yelling against AI, the last man against it. So
Yeah.
it's my stance.
What are you showing Greg Jennings measurements in 2006?
We got listed 5'11", buck 97.
Okay. All right. All right, so
So
another one under two. So basically, you're not going to throw babies out with the bathwater for being 5'11", 189 pounds.
no, if you're close, you're right there, then we're not going to exclude you, especially on the weight side of things. So, but to your overall point, how much inventory and stock should we take into the 6 foot and above? Yeah, I think some, not just based off the data, but based off McCarthy's own words recently that he likes a bigger target and wants a big body for the quarterback to throw to. In his mind, that naturally increases completion percentage and overall accuracy, and maybe a bigger window for a quarterback to potentially miss. So will this exclude, quote unquote, even though nothing is certain, these real small receivers? Zachariah Branch, we've cited him before. Probably not a good idea to put him in your mock draft. There's a Kendrick Law on day 3 who's 5'11" and change, 203. Is he out? I wouldn't call him out, especially with the visit, but you probably trend towards those bigger receivers, or at least guys with good size, 6 foot and about 200 pounds.
All right. I'm trying to pull up your wide receiver study from last year at the three cone and the shuttle time. Let's see. You came away last year with height needs to be 5'10" or more, weight 180 or more, hand size 9 inches or more, bench 10 reps or more, 40 time, 4.55 or faster, vertical jump 33 inches or greater, broad jump 10 foot or greater, short shuttle 4.3 or better, 3 cones 7.10 or better. That's why I'm really interested. That's why I get so mad about now at the combine that we don't get some of these numbers, because look, I even if we just boil this down to short shuttle and three cone, it's not. I don't think it's a huge coincidence that 9 of the 11, as part of last year's study, had a short shuttle of 4.3 or better, and 9 of the 11 also had 7.10 3 cone time or better. That's pretty. Even though you're only talking about 11, that's pretty substantial there.
Yeah, so we'll see. Like I said, I'll do the study. We'll get maybe some more concrete pro day information. You're right. Brugler's The Beast comes out this upcoming week. I don't know exactly what day. Monday would make sense. I don't know if I've seen Dane confirm exactly what day of the week, but tucked in that is pro day information for all these guys too. And sometimes it's data that we don't have or he's
Right.
not easily accessible. So I don't even know if Sarad did the shuttle drills, the cone drills. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But if he did, we'll certainly take a look.
All right. So we will hopefully Monday's the day with that. Maybe it'll give us a little something to talk about, because it's probably going to be a slow weekend for the Steelers here as far as news goes. So hopefully he drops that thing on Monday, and
Probably. It's
maybe
also good for ages. Sometimes you don't.
yeah.
We know the ages for a lot of prospects, but there are some, like I think Devin Easton, I just did the D lineman in Minnesota. Interesting guy. I don't have the age for him. It's just good to get confirmation on those things.
All right. The other real quick thing I wanted to quickly discuss is why do guards fall in drafts?
Perceived positional value.
First rounds.
Yeah, perceived positional value. Tackles are the premium position. They block the $40 million pass rushers, and so they protect your quarterback most of all. And there's a scarcity of good tackles in the NFL. A lot of tackles kick inside to guard, which creates more supply than there is a tackle, and so that's typically why they fall.
All right, and there's a very good chance that the first true guard in this draft won't be drafted until at least outside of the top 10, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect Ioane to be taken top 10. I don't know exactly where he's going to fall, but top 10 is unlikely.
And there's probably only so many teams that you can, ESPN's got their that annual, what do they call it here, draft predictor and all like that.
Oh yeah, send me a link. We're doing a link exchange today because
I
they can never find where that's at.
Yeah, he posted it the other day. Let me send it to you real quick for you to look at here. Okay, sent. And they've got, you want at, let's see, where is he here? Guard. they've got him the Ravens, the highest percent chance at 14 overall, and the earliest they could see him being taken is 12th overall by the Cowboys. To me, it's hard to imagine the Cowboys picking a guard at 12th overall. At 13th overall is the Rams. I think with the guards they got over there, it'd be hard to imagine that happening. I imagine the Ravens could be in play. Who are the? Let's go to our lads real quick and look at their starting guards right now. The Ravens.
Yeah, I know
They lost.
Lately was
They
their free
also
agent.
lost. I mean, they lost Linderbaum, and that's going to be at some point got to be a priority for them, even though they've gone out and signed a center, right?
Yeah, they signed Danny Pinter, but he's a backup. He's not a long-term guy. Laley was terrible at right guard last year. I believe he remains a free agent. So they are lacking along the interior.
Right, and they still, even though they went out and got Hendrickson as an edge rusher, they could still use guys that get after the passer in that defense, right?
Yeah, I mean, they signed John Simpson, and that was big. That was a key signing for them. And they have Voorhees, who started last year. Ioane is going to be in play for Baltimore. Will they take him? I don't know, but certainly that's going to be a team to watch, and it'll be peak NFL draft for Baltimore to take the Steelers guy.
All right, Buccaneers, this is according to ESPN, Buccaneers at 15 are unlikely to take a guard. At 16, the Jets, it really feels unlikely that the Jets would draft a guard at 16. They got so many needs over there.
They lost Vera Tucker, even though he's been hurt
right
a ton. I mean, I don't know. Not the craziest idea.
What is the rest of their
I'm trying to look.
depth chart right now for the Jets?
We're
trying to reverse engineer. We've reached that. They got Dylan Parham over there, I think. They've got Joe Tittman over there, I think, playing guard for them right now. So I guess it's not totally out of the question for them at guard, but man, they have so many needs over there. It feels like guard's going to get pushed out at least in the first round for them at what did I say, 16. At 17, the Lions really need a tackle, don't they?
They're going to move Sewell to left tackle. They probably will need something at right tackle. Yeah, again, we can go down the list here and we can try to map it out, and you never know what happens on draft. There's also just the value standpoint, too. The draft does not have a lot of blue chip kind of guys, and so could that just weigh in his favor of, yeah, maybe he's not the most important position compared to tackle or edge, but he's just the best guy available. Let's not ignore that in a draft that's not super top heavy. So we'll just see what happens. Is it possible he falls to 21? Yes. Is it likely? Probably not, but you never know.
All right. I think there's a better chance. I would say there's better than a 50% chance that Ioane drops to the Steelers at 21.
ESPN's giving him about a 20% chance of being there at 21, so you're significantly more confident than they are.
All right. And we have this conversation year after year. And look, I mean, I think overall, as an average over the last 5 years, true, only in the top 20 picks of the draft on average, at most, I think 2 guards go before then, true guards.
Sure. So we'll see. I wonder, who do they kind of view as the most likely pick for Pittsburgh at 21? Are they circling any one name? There are so many for us to try to.
Well, they've got needs here at being quarterback, wide receiver, guard, and cornerback as top 4 needs for the Steelers.
Just wonder at 21, is there one prospect that they have the percentage higher for Pittsburgh than anybody else? I'm not seeing it, just kind of going through some of the names
it
here.
It would probably be a wider look at Simpson, obviously.
Sure. Technically, no, they're behind the Jets. Their Steelers are second in this projection in terms of percentage chance.
All right, look at wide receiver, obviously.
Yeah, I was going through Boston and Tyson and Lemon, and they're not.
Tyson's not very high. Boston would probably be one of the higher ones, I would reckon. Denzel Boston.
They view him as more of a late first round, early second round guy, so Pittsburgh's not leading there. I don't want to get in the weeds of it all, but
Okay.
it doesn't really matter all that
Anyway,
much.
the whole reason I was going this route is thinking, we would talk annually about guards getting pushed down. Obviously, the Steelers could use a guard in the first round. I still don't think it's out of the question with Vega out of Penn State.
All right. We'll see. It's not out of the question. You're right about that. And the draft day's full of surprises.
All right, where else did we want to go?
Just last
Anywhere?
thing here, Omar Khan had a one-on-one sit-down interview with Max Starks, and nothing groundbreaking there. He did note that he's open to trading down. Now, in fairness and context, he says he's open to trading up. He's open to standing pat and making all 12 selections. He says this basically every year, that he's open to everything. But I think it was interesting for him at least to acknowledge the idea of trading down and collecting more picks in a year in which Pittsburgh has more picks than they've ever had before.
All right, if you're trading down, if this team trades down, it'll, especially from 21, it would really be a stop the presses type moment when it comes to this team historically. And if they did do that, and it's hard to imagine them moving down than say more than two, at max three spaces, because you're only going to trade down to still get a player that you really, really value. And then trying to predict how much more a player is going to fall down more than 3 spots. Good luck with that.
If they're going to trade down, you got to go big. You trade down because some team's giving you some sort of great asset. And in theory, that would be a pick in 2027. Now, I know most teams are going to have a lot of pause on that, not want to give up 27 capital. But if there's a team that has a firmly planted quarterback situation, I don't know, pick a team, Dave, the Bills, for example. They don't really care about what next year's quarterback class looks like because they're not going to be in the market for it. So what does it matter if the class ends up being great or not? What if they say, let's give you number 20, or we're going to give you the first round pick in 2027 and then come up? That's incentive to move back. And even though that'll be moving down more than just a couple of spots, I think maybe 6 is, I'm just giving a scenario in which if you're going to move down, I don't think it's to move down a couple of spots. I think it's to take a big swing if you're going to get something in 27.
Not that it matters in the big picture worth anything, but the draft's in Pittsburgh. There's going to be a lot of people booing if they trade down from 21.
If they stay in the first round, though, then okay, just wait 10 more minutes. Okay, more than 10 minutes. Wait a half hour for the team to pick at 28, and who cares if it's for Omar Khan not going to care about them booing about first round picks and whatever the case is. So I don't know.
I can't imagine it happening.
Just depends on the deal. Depends on all the variables that no one can really predict. Who's on the board and what are the offers, and who's trying to come up and all those things. So Khan's keeping an open mind. I just thought it was notable, even though he says a lot of the same thing every single year where all options on the table. When you have 12 picks and he says, I may trade down and get more, I thought that was at least interesting. It was kind of interesting.
All right. Okay, this is probably not going to be one of our top 10 episodes content-wise because just not a lot to talk about. Still don't have the Travis Homer contract details. Still don't have the Brock Hoffman details as far as I can see. Hold on a minute here. Wait a minute. Maybe something came in.
We got news?
No, I'm looking for the contract of Brock Hoffman. Nope, not seeing anything there.
False alarm.
No, false alarm. Okay, emails. Let's get to the email machine and get out of here.
Let's do that and close out today's show.
All right, Paul Lutz has a post about Vega here. Hello, gentlemen. Fantastic jobs with guard. Being our top need in my eyes, I really believe the Steelers should go after Vega. My only concern is that I don't think he's going to be there at 21. I don't even think he's going to be there at 15. With teams like Baltimore and the Chargers in desperate need of offensive line help, I believe the only way we have a crack at him is if we trade up to 13 to get ahead of Baltimore. I know the Chargers pick after us, however. I believe they would make a move to jump us. What would be the cost to move up to 13 for Vega? And do you think it's worth looking for Looking forward to hearing your take. Thank you. Keep up the great work. We just went through a bad, loose, poorly put together exercise right there. For starters, I think there's maybe, at least off the cuff, 2 teams, maybe potentially, assuming no one goes up ahead of the Steelers at 21, to get a guy like Vega. I think at least it feels if Vega, I I just I can't see him going top 10, or I don't see him going top 15. Then the question, let's even say to move up to 13, what would it take to get from 21? You're talking what,
Yeah.
8 spots there.
Yeah, that's fair because Baltimore at 14, they certainly could take him. They may not, but if there's a place to mock him, probably the most popular place he'll be mocked to, Ioane, it's going to be Baltimore. So using this trade value chart from Draft Tech, and I know trade value charts have evolved and some teams have different ones, and we can debate the value of them. Kevin Colbert disliked trade value charts, didn't use them. I imagine Pittsburgh is now. You got a 350 point gap between 13 and 21. 13's worth 1150, 21 is worth 800. So you could do basically one of two things to make the math work in terms of the trade chart. Trade your second round pick, which is worth 370 points, or a pair of your third rounders, 2 of your 3 third rounders would basically get you there. That's a loose way to imagine a deal.
All right, and who is at 13 right now? That's
The
Atlanta, right?
Rams.
Okay.
According to the draft chart I'm looking at, but I don't know if that's actually totally updated, so don't quote me on that.
I think it's Atlanta via the Rams, right? Is it?
I'll take your word for it because the chart I'm looking at, I don't fully trust the teams that are in place.
Oh,
So
no,
you
Atlanta
tell me.
traded it to the Rams. Okay.
That was from James Pierce year, I think, last year. Yeah. So is it the Rams?
Yeah, it's the Rams.
Okay. And there you go.
And how
So
many
you would
picks
trade
do the Rams
53.
have? The Rams,
Well, they love trading away picks. They just traded away one of their first rounders for McDuffie. That's their current first round pick,
all
only
right.
first round pick.
Yeah, it's it. I suppose that would be where you would want to go to bypass the first hurdle. Now, will the Steelers give up a second round pick to go up that far?
Yeah, we have no idea. We're just answering the question. You could look at Dallas at 12, and if you want to get really fun, let's throw in Patrick Queen in a deal and throw in a draft pick and do it that way. You could probably take a third and Patrick Queen to go up to 12.
All right. The question becomes, how much do they love the player? If that's the guy that they love and think can be an all pro 10-year guard in the league, then it's easy to justify, but you don't have those answers.
Right. And we won't have those answers until we see their moves and Pittsburgh can call and try to get a deal done and not something doesn't work out. We'll never know about it or unlikely to know about it. So it's why draft is always art, not science.
All right. Deshaun Campbell writes in, "Sup guys, I really can't get over this Aaron Rodgers thing and how it may affect the Pittsburgh quarterback selection in the long run. To me, Pittsburgh has done some unethical things lately when it comes to quarterbacks, so I really don't trust them." Unethical?
What does that mean?
I don't know. My concern is that if Rodgers returns for another year and the way McCarthy talks about Will Howard, it will affect them taking a quarterback early in the 27 draft class. If 2026 is old man Rodgers and the Steelers want to see what they have in 27 with 2 years of Howard being molded, that could affect the 27 draft class, because taking a first round quarterback is already telling Howard, you're not our long-term starter, without even giving him a season to see what he is. I just got a bad feeling bringing A-Rod back could result in possibly waiting until 2028 to take a top quarterback. Man, Deshaun, I get it, and I look, I I don't. I want to worry about getting my spaghetti cooked today, and not worrying about the price of very lean ground beef 2 years from now. I'm being a smart ass there, but I don't think I understand what he's saying is what if Aaron Rodgers comes in this year, plays the entire season. You don't really get much of a look at Will Howard, and the way that Mike McCarthy's talked about Will Howard, would that put him in a situation of shying away from a 2027 early first round quarterback in the draft because of all that playing out that way? The Steelers would be absolutely foolish, in my opinion, if Will Howard barely plays any in 2026 and Aaron Rodgers is your guy in 2026. You should have enough, at least, info from Mike McCarthy coaching this guy, even though not getting him on the field for any snaps. You if you know either Will Howard has it and is worth the gamble of riding with, or he's not. In other words, if there's a quarterback that you like in the 2027 draft that you unequivocally think can be your franchise guy, whatever happens in 2026 should not play a role in that.
Yeah, the short answer is if Howard has gone his first 2 years barely playing, has a very small, light uh, imprint on the NFL, it's not going to stop Pittsburgh from taking a quarterback in the first round of 27 if they love a guy. At least it shouldn't. So I don't think that scenario is particularly concerning. If you want to play out the scenario in which Pittsburgh may not, I think the difficult spot would be Howard ends up starting half the games this year, plays okay, shows some promise, has a typical first year starter season, some ups, some downs. Then what do you do in 27? Do you commit to Howard or do you punt and take the first round quarterback? What's the right answer? I think might be the difficult spot. And if Howard is just stuck on the bench all year.
All right. I understand the concern there, but I mean, let's a lot of we there's we're going to get a lot of info or not a lot of info in 2026.
Who are the top quarterbacks in 2028? Go down that rabbit hole. CJ Carr from Notre Dame, it looks like maybe the top name there. So let's get let's get that talk started.
Let's see here. What else do we have? I don't think we got anything else in here. Nope. I think we've got all of them out of the way here right now. Well, let's see. Oh, no, Matthew Sutherland's back in here from Warren, Michigan. He says, love the show. Enjoy the in-depth coverage of the draft. Are there any day 2, day 3 prospect that just feel like Pittsburgh Steelers players you could see the Steelers drafting? Are there any prospects with Steelers bloodlines in this year's draft? The Steelers have had a habit of drafting these types of guys. Finally, are there any prospects that have other connections to the organization, such as Garrett Nussmeier and all? We usually have a post about this time about bloodlines and all. Are there any harder connections, Steeler connections? I mean, in recent years, we've had almost the give me spaces in the free space of the bingo card with the Bruners, and obviously going back a few years to the Connor Hayward thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are there anything to that level this year?
I was asked this the other day. It's a good question. I should research. I have not come across anything this year from the prospects that I've written up, or the ones that other guys have done. I'll have to maybe ask our guys and see if anyone has anything. I don't think there are nearly as strong connections in terms of bloodlines or direct ties to Pittsburgh. I'm just kind of grasping at straws. Caden McDonald from Ohio State knows the Hayward family pretty well. He grew up, I think, friends with Connor. I don't know what his relationship to Cam is, but I think there's something there you would imagine that's lighter than typical Bruner or Connor Hayward himself to, whenever they came out of the draft. You have the Adam Henry connections to Omar Cooper Jr. and even Donovan McCulley from Michigan, but that's not really the same thing. So
yeah, and he's mostly thinking about day 2. He says day 2 or day 3 prospects. I don't know.
I think he has two different questions.
Yeah. We got 2 weeks, and usually this is about the time when we start digging deeper into bloodlines. I think we have probably an annual bloodline post at some point, whether it be NFL bloodlines or Steeler connections and all. So maybe that's something for us to tackle, especially maybe on a Saturday or a Sunday in the next couple of weeks here, Alex.
Yeah, I could be missing something, and somebody tell me if I'm wrong. I'd love to know. I'll research it more, but I don't believe there is that Carson Bruner, the Connor Hayward, the TJ Watt, I don't
Joey
know,
Porter Jr.
Joey Porter Jr., right? That fits so neatly and cleanly with such obvious connection to Pittsburgh. So this year's class may not contain one of those guys.
All right. All right. Now we've gotten through the email machine. So with that, we'll round out this episode here. Monday, once again, hopefully Dane Brugler releases his annual draft guide, which is all, look, yeah, even if there's one reason to join the Athletic, it's for that. You get your money's worth out of that alone there. So we'll look forward to hopefully have that to discuss. Real quick, what are your thoughts on all this PFF stuff? And I know you haven't gone way down the rabbit hole and all, but a lot of PFF guys got laid off. It seems like the future of PFF's in flux, based on at least what we've known PFF to be and become over the years. I know a lot of people are not losing sleep over that. Overall, I I think I think when it comes to charting stuff and some of the unique things and some of the unique stats and advanced stats that PFF has developed based on their charting over the years has been really invaluable. I think they've really set a standard as far as that comes. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion about the grades, which we've taken issue with on several times over the years. For me to criticize something and to not have a better solution is kind of hypocritical there. But there are flaws in what PFF does. I'm kind of worried about what's going to fill the gap, assuming PFF declines the way a lot of people think it's going to decline with the big kind of corporate takeover ownership shift in vision goes.
Yeah, I don't know what that future is going to be. I've used PFF a lot this draft cycle, not because of the grade aspect, but because of the hard data in terms of how many snaps did this guy play and how many did he play in the slot and out wide and offensive line
A gap,
position.
B gap, over tackle. Man, you could just go on and on. The sides that the players played, the rush from there just some of the stuff that they chart. We would never be able to have that info doing it ourselves.
Right, the hard data is really important. Also for the NFL at large too. When they sign Jamel Dean, just to confirm, okay, he's a right side player. That's what I see on tape. I don't want to go through his entire career. Is that what the numbers say? They do. Okay, information, sussed out. So we'll see. I don't know what the plan is there. Something in the market could replace it. I know was it some in their sports is trying to maybe get in that space a little bit more. I just feel for all the layoffs. I mean, those are guys that I know a lot of them, relatively well, a lot of the draft guys and PFF guys in that space. And it's always tough and it's always disheartening when a company gets bought out and immediately lays off scores of people. It's a terrible model. But that's kind of my focus, just on the personal, the guys losing their jobs.
I tell you, it'd be great if we had, and look, I think PFR does a great job in StatHead, which is really the same thing. We utilize that a lot. And we've utilized a lot of other stat companies over the years. Just some of them are just harder to navigate than others. But man, if we could come up with something, a conglomerate of all of them that made it searching for data real quick, and AI is probably going to end up conquering this in another 5 years. They're not there yet, obviously, but there is a lot of value, at least to me and at least to Alex, with just the charting component alone of what PFF does. So we'll see how much that changes moving forward, and if somebody can fill that space. But losing PFF, at least in their current form, if indeed it does decline, is not a good thing for the industry, I don't think.
No, and I know the NFL just put out a memo telling teams something to the effect, and I'm just going off of my memory here, not reading the article that I checked out yesterday, that they are kind of telling teams to not buy services. They want kind of a universal model or universal company to work with. So I don't know how that's going to change things either. A lot of teams do subscribe to PFF, they have their PFF Ultimate, which is very expensive and offers more information and usually just given out to companies, not consumers. So, yeah, the landscape is changing. I don't know, Dave. We'll ride that wave and we'll make it work. We always make it work, and that'll be our plan going forward.
All right, sure will. Okay, let's see. As usual, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. So we will see everybody on Monday, and I guess we should wish a happy Easter, everybody, right? And have a safe weekend, and we'll talk to you Monday. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.